Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be posting the first ever book review vlog for Proseposters today. And basically what these are, they're like short book reviews in under 5 minutes where I talk about 5 things about a specific book. I've been putting these up on our Instagram stories, but I feel like it would be nice to have something a little more permanent on YouTube for people to go back and watch again. So I've decided to redo this video and just do it specifically for you guys. And I'm really excited about today's video because I'm going to be talking about a book that we actually have a poster for in our store. So this is the poster, and I don't know if you can tell by looking at it, and I'm sorry for the glare, but it is for Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And I'll leave the link down below if you want to check it out later. This poster actually has the entire text from the book on it, which is why it's one of my favorites. And if you want to read the book off the poster, you actually can. But I read mine with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, this really cute little book version of it that I got a couple years ago actually. I've had it on my shelf for a little while. But I read it from here, and I also complemented this with the audiobook version. Let's talk 5 things about Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Before we begin with the first point, let's have a quick review of what this book is about. Even if you've read it or seen the movies or the cartoons, it's probably hard to remember what exactly Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is about because it's a really crazy, wacky story, right? But the basic premise is this girl named Alice is lounging with her sister on a sunny afternoon, and she notices this rabbit. She follows this rabbit down the rabbit hole, and she falls into Wonderland, which is this weird place where she meets a lot of strange and oddball characters, and she eats a lot of things. In fact, Alice, I think, spends a lot of time thinking about what she wants to eat, which is funny. But yeah, she eats a lot of things that make her either shrink or grow, and a lot of bizarre things happen to her. So let's start with number 1. This is the journey from childhood to adulthood. So Alice begins with her sister, her older sister, who is reading a book, and she ends the tale with her older sister. And at the end of the book, her sister starts thinking about Alice as an adult, what Alice will be like as a woman, what she'll be like when she has children of her own. So it's kind of like a journey from Alice being a child to Alice becoming a woman. And during the book, Alice is constantly seeking out this garden, this beautiful garden that she glimpses early on in the book in Wonderland. And I think the garden represents kind of like achieving this adulthood, right? So she has to go through all these different difficulties and strange experiences to get to the garden, and then once she's in the garden, it's not at all what she expected, which I think is exactly how adulthood plays out. You know, when you're a kid, you always have this very specific idea of what you'll be like when you're a grown-up, and it never turns out that way. So I think this is a very interesting way to represent going from a child to an adult. And the other thing I noticed is that a lot happens to Alice in a very short amount of time in this book. So the book is actually very short, but I've always thought of it as longer than this because so much happens. And I think that speaks to how short childhood is. You spend so little of your life being a child, and most of it you're an adult. So I think, you know, childhood is gone in the blink of an eye, and that's kind of how it happens in this book. She goes through all these really weird experiences. They all happen in a super short amount of time, and then, bam, it's over just like that. Number 2, the madness of the world we live in. I think Lewis Carroll had a very similar point of view to writers like Kurt Vonnegut, in that it's very difficult to understand the world around us, and it's that sort of philosophy where we're all living in this crazy world, but we have no idea what's really going on, and everybody likes to pretend like they've got control over their own lives, but in reality we're just kind of flailing through life hoping for the best. And I think Lewis Carroll shows this in his book, and one of my favorite scenes related to this is when the Cheshire Cat is talking to Alice, and he says, you know, we're all mad here, you're mad and I'm mad. And I think this points to the fact that, you know, you always think you're the sanest person in the room, but it's never true. And basically, we're all living in this mad world, but hey, we're all in it together, right? Number 3, Alice as a strong female figure. When I watch the cartoon, I always get this impression of Alice as being kind of a very timid, sort of weak character. But rereading the book, I realized that Lewis Carroll actually wrote her as a really strong female character. She's someone who knows what she wants. She's not afraid, you know, like she explores this strange world. She meets these people, and she's never ever afraid of a situation or backs down from a situation. And I find it especially interesting the way she stands up to the Queen, for example. So even people that are older or more powerful than her, if Alice sees something that is wrong or that she considers, you know, not to be morally right, then she will speak up. And I like the way she's got like a little bit of sass to go with it. So it's kind of cool, and I really love that he presented her as this strong little girl, and kind of cool that, you know, you think if Alice were a real character, what kind of woman would she grow up to be? Number 4, Lewis Carroll's life brought into this book. So Lewis Carroll was a very interesting character. He was a lifelong bachelor. He always seemed to get along better with children than with adults. And some interesting aspects of his childhood, one in particular is that he had a stutter. So most likely he was probably bullied at some point, and this is a stutter he carried into adulthood, so he might have been mocked for it. He was definitely self-conscious about it. So Lewis Carroll brought a lot of his, you know, ideas and life experience into Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And I think in a lot of ways this book is how he dealt with adult life or the adult world on his own terms, and he did this through the character of Alice. It's just definitely interesting how, as somebody who struggled, for example, with a stutter, and he was also not very physically strong, he had an immensely strong imagination, and he brought to life Wonderland and all the things in his imagination in a way that few people can. So it's really interesting to see how a writer like him created this entire crazy world, and how I think it had like a great deal of significance for him. And maybe it's escapism, maybe it's not, but I think like all of us know that feeling. You know, sometimes you'd rather be in Wonderland than in the real world because people can be cruel, life can be difficult. So it's nice to imagine a place where you feel safe, even if everything that's happening in that place is chaotic and crazy. At least you are in control of your imaginary world. Number 5, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is a book that's best enjoyed when read aloud. I know I mentioned earlier that I read some of it from the book, but I actually enjoyed listening to the audiobook so much more. And I think, you know, like the first time I read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, my mom read it to me. And Lewis Carroll originally told these stories verbally to his boss's children. So I think they're just tales that are meant to be spoken as opposed to read like a regular novel. And in a lot of ways, if you sit down and read it, or at least I found this, it's actually a little boring. I don't know why. And it's just so much more amusing. You get drawn into the world so much more when you listen to the audiobook. So I definitely recommend, if you're thinking about reading Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, that you check out the audiobook and see how it feels for you. And let me know down below if you like the audiobook or if you prefer to read it. What's your preference? Alright, that's it for 5 things about Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I hope you enjoyed this review. And if you have any comments, or you want to talk about this book, or you have any questions, please do leave me a comment down below. And if you enjoyed the video, please feel free to subscribe. Like I said, I'll leave a link down below for the shop where this beautiful Alice in Wonderland poster is up, and you can check it out there too. So until next week,